Hi, I'm Danielle Pashko from Soulhakker, and I'm here with Dr. Jason Karp. He's an exercise physiologist, a coach, TEDx speaker. You've authored like 17 books. Okay,
Yeah,
it's a
quite a
lot.
lot of.
Wow. And one of the books that made me interested in even speaking with you was Run Like a Woman, and how, from what my understanding of it is, how it seems to align with women and running and their cycles, or even overall exercise, because hormones are related to the way that we our output in our bodies and the way we function. So, yeah, thank you for chatting with me.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. This is fun.
So, as a man, what inspired you to focus on menstrual based training? I'm sure women like probably ask you this question.
Yeah, I do get asked that a lot because they think it's a little weird. But my answer is always, well, look at how many male gynecologists there are. So there
Yeah.
are a lot of people, there are a lot of men who are interested in women's physiology. I'm not the only one, but it really just started a long time ago. I mean, I've been fascinated by women for a long time, but
Yeah.
specifically this subject, it started when I was 24. I was fresh off my master's degree, and I got a head college coaching job in New Jersey, and it was an all-women's school at the time.
Wow.
So that was my first time coaching a team of females.
Hmm.
So that's kind of when the interest started in women's physiology and what that means, specifically what that means for training. And then I went back to school for the PhD, and I was taking classes, learning about reproductive physiology. And that's when it really kind of solidified for me that there's something here, that there's really, the fluctuation of hormones to the menstrual cycle has a lot of implications for how women should train, specifically endurance athletes, which is my main area of expertise. And so that's kind of what got me started on this whole thing is the combination of having the opportunities to coach women and also formally studying the physiology.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know for myself it makes such a difference. I'm very athletic, but around the time of my cycle, like I'm a different person. Like I can
Yeah.
be completely laid out. So, it really is critical to make sure you have an understanding of that. And from your perspective, how do cycles influence performance and recovery and motivation?
Yeah, I mean the big thing, and again, my area of focus has always been on the endurance part of it, and it turns out that estrogen is a very runner-friendly hormone.
Mm,
And so times of the month when estrogen is high, that seems to be the best time to push the endurance. A lot of that has to do with how estrogen changes a woman's metabolism. So the biggest metabolic difference between men and women is that women rely more on fat at any given exercise intensity,
yes.
both in absolute intensity as well as relative intensity compared to men, whereas men typically go straight to the carbohydrate use. Women metabolism is shifted toward a greater reliance on fat, and that's due to estrogen. There's a lot of interesting research that's been done on rats, giving male rats estrogen and looking at differences in metabolism. And so, it's hard to do that kind of research on humans because it's
Right.
hard to find guys who are going to be willing to be given estrogen. But we can do this kind of research on rodents, and so estrogen seems to shift metabolism toward a greater reliance on fat, which is great for endurance.
So would you
And
say
so,
women their training is better during the follicular phase,
yeah, and
luteal
so
phase?
yeah, and so during the first 2 weeks, the follicular phase, when it's dominated by estrogen, and
Mhm.
estrogen is on the rise the whole time, especially week two, that
Yeah.
seems to be the best time for women to really push the endurance work.
Hmm.
Whereas other times of the month, like when progesterone has a lot of the opposite effects of estrogen.
Right.
And so the times of the month when estrogen is peaking, which is usually in the mid-luteal phase, that is, I don't want to say it's the quote worst time for endurance performance, but it seems to be that it's if a woman had to choose when's the best time of the month for her to perform best for endurance activities, it's typically when estrogen is the dominant hormone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, what about for women who are in perimenopause and they have these unpredicted irregular cycles? Is there a way to track that kind of training?
Yeah, if it's regularly irregular, then you can
Yeah.
find a pattern. But if it becomes irregularly irregular, then you really have to just go by how you feel. Then it's hard to actually plan a training because it's irregularly irregular. So you don't know what's going to happen. But
Right.
even with a regular irregular menstrual cycle, then you can still over time see the pattern and then you can plan out the training based on that pattern. So I always recommend to women before they go ahead and just start using the menstrual cycle to plan their training, first just plot out the menstrual cycle and just train the way you normally would, but make sure you know all the time, what week or what day you are in your cycle. And then document, how you feel during certain kinds of workouts. Keep a menstrual log. And then over time, if you do that for 3 or 4 or 5 months, you'll start to see a pattern that this time of the month, certain workouts don't go so well, but this time of the month they go great. And I feel better at certain times of the month versus other times of the month. And then when you have that pattern laid out, then you can really start to plan the training long term, assuming that you're going to continue to have that regular cycle. And then that makes the training a lot better because then you can really take advantage and exploit aspects of the menstrual cycle.
Right. So if they're in the luteal phase, which is the second phase of the menstrual cycle, and their hormones are dropping and they don't have as much estrogen at that point, should they really cut back on their workout? Do you feel like they should just like like lay off, or if they're training really hard, just like honor themselves, or if they feel good, just kind of go with it?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a combination of both for
Hmm.
women. A man's training, the way you plan it, doesn't have to be so open to change. But a woman's training
Not
has to
fair.
be, I know, it's much easier to plan a man's training that way. But for a woman, it needs to be open to change. So yeah, you take advantage of certain aspects of the menstrual cycle, but then you allow room for how you feel. And on days or weeks that you feel great, then go ahead and push the training. On days or weeks that you don't feel so great, it's okay to back off
Right.
and
Kind of use your intuition.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it needs to be a combination of both. It's both the science and the feeling, but the feeling is also based on the science because there's a reason why you feel that way at certain times of the month. There's a physiological reason. And so if you understand what's happening during the cycle and how that influences how you feel, then you can capitalize on all that and train a lot smarter rather than try to push through things when you know it's not the right time of the month to try to be pushing through.
Right. So if you were, let's say, coaching a woman that's already like going through menopause, do you find that, I mean, there's also age, that's a factor. So you maybe not performing like someone who's 25, 30 years old, but also do you feel like the training should be significantly different when you're menopausal versus when you're, still having your cycles?
Yeah, because the significant thing about menopause is the loss of estrogen.
Yeah.
And so to combat that, women should do different things post-menopause than what they did pre-menopause. So high intensity work is really important post-menopause
That was a
for
question.
a number of
Yeah.
reasons. One is to protect the bones because estrogen, more than anything else, estrogen has the most significant impact on bone health. A lot of people think it's calcium or vitamin D, and those things are important, but they're
Mhm.
not as important as estrogen. Estrogen really protects a woman's bones.
I know that's the thing. Women think they can just supplement
Yeah.
once they're going through those phases and having the hormonal decline. And it's like, that's not going to do the job. You still have to lift weights. You still have to exercise. Like you still
Right.
have to build up your bone density. That's super important.
Yeah. And so high intensity training, whether that comes in the form of the cardio training
Mhm.
or it comes in the form of heavy strain, it has to be heavy strain. The 5 pound pink dumbbells isn't going to do it. It has to be heavy strain because the way the bones respond to the stress is when you have very strong contractions of muscles, those muscles tug on the bones. And
Yeah.
that's the stimulus to make the bones stronger. That and also weight bearing exercise. So something like swimming isn't as good as something like running because running is a hugely weight-bearing exercise. It's like 2 to 3 times your
And
body
people
weight on
don't
every
think
step.
that. Right. Because people think weight bearing, you think of like a heavy weight, but running can be weight bearing also. So
Yeah. Yeah, or any kind of jumping exercise. Those are the things that are really good for bone density. Cycling, not so much. Swimming, not so, definitely not swimming. There's
Hmm.
hardly, there's no weight bearing in swimming. In fact, you're buoyant. You're less than your body weight when you're swimming. And so it's really the weight bearing activity and the heavy strength training where you have strong muscle contractions, especially from different directions, like strength training in different planes of movement, where you have the muscles pulling on the bones from different angles. That kind of stuff is really good for bone density.
Yeah, I always think about that in terms of like what kind of exercise is best. And I mean, for me, I do a lot of martial arts, but I also like I only lift 10-pound weights. Is that enough?
Yeah, you may need to
I do
increase it a
10,
little,
10,
Danielle.
10 pounds on each, like I have muscles, but I just,
Oh, Danielle, you're blinded. Put those away. You're blinding me.
but maybe I should be doing more. I don't know. I've
Yeah,
been
and
doing
especially for lower body too. I mean, you need to lift heavy and lift heavy for lower body, like heavy squat. But that, having said that, you don't just take someone who's not used to lifting weights and have them go into the gym as a 50-year-old and start squatting, really heavy. You
right.
have to progress to that. And because it's heavy, you also may need somebody else there with you. You may need a trainer or someone to spot you because it can be dangerous if you're lifting very heavy weights, especially
Absolutely.
a
Yeah, I
big
think,
barbell or something.
oh yeah, a trainer is
Yeah,
is definitely
yeah. So
critical to
you
be.
definitely need some supervision to do that kind of strength training because it could be dangerous.
Definitely. And I just want to ask you, because now that we're talking about this, just as far as eating, I'm sure that you have some thoughts on, because you do a lot with nutrition and you've written books on nutrition as well. But the eating, as far as your menstrual cycle, do you work with that as well? Or
Yeah. So the to try to simplify because people get very confused about nutrition, and that's
yeah,
largely the media's fault. I mean, we throw a lot of things at people, and people
I
are like, well,
know.
what the heck do I eat? And so there's only a few things that a female really needs to know about nutrition. One is energy availability. You simply have to eat enough to support all the training you do. And the more exercise you do, the more you have to eat. A lot of women run into problems with not eating enough. And then when your body fat percentage gets too low, then that starts to affect the menstrual cycle. So that's the one big thing that women need to be aware of is simply just eating enough calories
Okay.
to compensate for how many calories they're burning through exercise. The other thing is anemia, and I deal a lot with this with endurance athletes. It's not as prevalent in strength type athletes, but in endurance athletes,
Mm.
low iron is a big deal, and that hurts oxygen delivery to the muscle when the iron is low. And so women just need to make sure that they get enough iron, especially endurance athletes. That they need to make sure that, if they are not eating meat, that they're making sure that they still get enough iron in a plant-based diet, which is still possible. You just have to be more aware of what you're consuming so you make sure that you get enough iron. And if someone does become anemic, which is pretty common,
Really
then
common.
they want an iron supplement.
Yeah, even if you're within the reference range, but let's say your ferritin is like on the low end of the reference range, you could still have those side effects of having weakness, or then if you bleed,
Sure.
you even feel more anemic. So that's really
Yeah.
important. And the last question I'm just going to ask about the nutrition part is, what do you think about intermittent fasting?
Yeah, the research doesn't show that any one type of diet manipulation is better than any other type of diet manipulation. So intermittent fasting is no different than anything. It really comes down to the total number of calories you consume every day. And there's multiple ways to do that. You can eat just one huge meal every day, and that's the only meal you eat, or you can eat multiple small meals a day to get in the same number of calories. So if you're exercising a lot,
If
it's
you're
probably
exercising a
better
lot, if
to
you're like
eat.
one of these athletes, do you think that intermittent fasting can it wreck their training, or do you think that it's okay?
It could if they're doing a high volume. Like if you take a runner who's running, 60, 70, 80 miles a week, then sure, intermittent fasting could negatively affect their training because then they're doing a lot of their runs in a completely fasted state, which at the very least is not going to feel good.
Right.
So for endurance athletes, it's probably better to consume multiple small meals a day rather than to, eat once or twice separated by many, many hours. But the research doesn't show that there's any type of diet that is better for athletic performance than any other type of diet.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've been working as a nutritionist for so many years and intermittent fasting, and you see all these trends come through over the course of the 20
Yeah.
years I've been doing this. And for me, I exercise a lot and I feel like crap when I'm fasting. It's just not for
Yeah.
me. And I think it has to be really individual. And I feel really well with small meals, and I know people will argue that point. But I think you have to go with your body and how you feel. I think it's just going with these fads or
I'm
what's like,
sure. Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't
And it
work.
all depends on the timing of the nutrition compared to when you're doing the various workouts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Meal timing is super important.
Yeah.
And how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, it's pretty easy. I'm on social media at Dr. Jason Karp is my handle on social media. And then all my books are on Amazon, of course.
Okay, awesome. And are you taking on any private uh, teams to train with or clients or anything like that right
Yeah,
now?
lately I've tried and been focusing more on putting together an elite running group, both in the US and in Kenya. So I used to live in Kenya and coach over there. And so I
Amazing.
still have my hand in things over there. So coaching athletes there and coaching athletes in the US and looking for a sponsor to put all that together.
That would be
Yeah.
incredible. Wow. Well, good
Yeah.
luck with that. And you had some really good information. So thank you for sharing.
Oh,
And
yeah, my pleasure.
we'll definitely be in touch.
Great. Thank you so much.